Welcome back to Good Morning Football, a developing story. Big news out of New England this morning. Josh Gordon, the receiver who signed earlier this season, or via trade actually, was brought to New England, released this statement via his own Twitter account. I'll take a look at it right here. I take my mental health very seriously at this point to ensure I remain able to perform at the highest level. I've recently felt like I could have a better grasp on things mentally. With that said, I will be stepping away from the football field for a bit to focus on my mental health. I'd like to thank Coach Belichick, Mr. Kraft, as well as countless others within the Patriots organization for their continued support. I want to thank my fans for their support as well as I continue down the path getting to 100%. Tom Pelissero soon after sent out this tweet sort of clarifying the statement further about him facing an indefinite suspension. We have Tom Pelissero joining us from Minnesota now live. Tom, what do you know?
Well, that's right, Kay. Josh Gordon making the announcement this morning that he is stepping away to focus on his mental health. But the backdrop to that announcement is what I am told is Josh Gordon facing once again indefinite suspension for violating the terms of his reinstatement under the substance abuse policy. Now, we know that addiction and reliance on substances is something that Josh Gordon has dealt with throughout his career. There were a lot of fits and starts when he was in Cleveland of coming back, stepping away. It went back and forth. He was reinstated last November, but there are conditions that are laid out by the medical director under the substance abuse policy that he must follow. The exact terms or what exactly violated his reinstatement is not entirely clear, but I am told that this is pretty far down the line at this point. There could even be an announcement relatively soon of Josh Gordon facing that indefinite suspension, and certainly with his personal announcement today as well, you can expect he will not be back with the Patriots anytime soon.
Thank you so much, Tom Pelissero, for the latest. Of course, we'll be keeping it on here on NFL Network for more as this story continues to unfold. We appreciate you. Let's welcome in Mike Giardi now, NFL Network's own. He's been around this team for years. Mike, how is this unfolding up there in New England?
I mean, look, I think it comes as a surprise to the fans to a certain degree, but I think, you know, from a team perspective, I just go back to the trade deadline and the Patriots, you know, being aggressive and trying to add another wide receiver. You know, they were linked to Demaryius Thomas. They went, you know, fairly far down that line trying to make a deal with Denver. I think they understood all along that despite Gordon carving out a big role, that he was one misstep away from having a situation like this. And I think they tried to, at least to a certain degree, protect themselves. But look, from a football perspective, this is pretty difficult for this football team. He's been an important player. Like I said, he's carved out a massive role in this team, Kay. And I just think, you know, 57 of 62 snaps against Pittsburgh, even though he was only targeted twice. He's been someone Brady's looked to on critical third downs. So from just a football perspective, there isn't really anyone next in line. Chris Hogan, Philip Dorsett will have to assume the role, but certainly neither one of those players is the physical presence, talent, or having the year that Josh Gordon was.
Mike, you know this franchise, you know this locker room as well as anybody. How will they respond and rally to this news this morning?
I mean, they'll have to be businesslike, and I suspected with the group that's in place, the leaders, the guys that have been there, the Devin McCourtys and the Tom Bradys and the Rob Gronkowskis, that it will just be like, all right, guys, this is just like an injury. This is, you know, it's unfortunate that this happens, but we have to deal with this, and we will deal with this going forward. They realize they can't feel sorry for themselves. I think that's been something that having been around them for a long time, bad losses, you know, Kenyon Drake, the Miami Miracle, all those sorts of things that they just, all right, that sucked that happened, but that doesn't change the fact that we have to get ready for the Buffalo Bills this week, and they'll approach it that way. But again, it's easier said than done. Mentally, you might be able to do it, but physically, they're going to miss that presence on the field.
Thank you so much, Mike Giardi, with the Patriots. I'm sure you'll be part of NFL Network's coverage all day long. We appreciate the time this morning on Good Morning Football. Back here at the breakfast table, there's a human element to this. Of course, our thoughts are with Josh Gordon. There's clearly an issue that he cannot quite get a grasp of. We're hoping he does get back to 100%. Football aside, that clearly should not be the most important thing to Josh Gordon right now. Then there is the football element that Mike Giardi so eloquently took us through. Let's break down their playoff scenario here first. They're 9-5. They've got the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Texans for the first-round bye because they beat them back in week 1 of this season. So their schedule, like you said, they're getting ready for the Bills. Then they've got the Jets. They've still got things to play for. These are important games to wrap up the season. That said, this was a built-in risk I'm sure Bill Belichick was aware of making the move. How do you see this, D'Angelo, as a football player, affecting the locker room, affecting this team's plans to go deep in the playoffs?
I mean, like you said, they're going to be business as usual in that locker room. That's just how they are. That's how Coach Belichick's teams respond to things like this. I think in the back of their minds, though, they know they're missing a very vital part of that offense because they know, too. The same way we're talking about Gronk not being the same Gronk, they know that. They know he doesn't quite move around like he used to. Players in that locker room knows that. Gronk knows that. And so this is another weapon that they won't be able to utilize in this playoff run. You know, we always default back to New England's going to be New England. They're going to show up when it's most important. And you felt comfortable saying that, knowing the weapons they had, seeing Josh Gordon kind of come on as of late and seeing, you know, other pieces that they can put in place. Like I said, it takes another weapon away from an already depleted-looking team, a team that looks old.
The worry meter wasn't at 0 for the Patriots going into this game against the Bills or into the playoffs. Where do you put the worry meter now? Let's say it was at 6. Now where is it?
There's attrition that's setting in. I mean, I believe in Belichick and Brady as much as anybody. You got to have the horses at some point. But I'll say this. Somewhere right now it's happened or it's happening as we speak. There's a meeting going on in Foxborough, and it's with Belichick and Brady and McDaniels, and they're saying, what the hell are we going to do? We got to get through these 2 games, and we got to figure this thing out. Josh McDaniels wanted to stay in New England. He could have gone to Indianapolis. This is what he's here for. They got to figure out a plan. I still believe in them. I think there's enough ingenuity and creativity. At some point, the talent level has to show up, even after I'm saying 20 years of undrafted guys and late-round picks. I will also say this about New England. I think that Josh Gordon was unfairly looped into this group of guys who they've brought in, the band of misfits that they brought to New England and fixed. Albert Hainsworth was brought in, and his problem was he was a jerk. Randy Moss's problem is he was mercurial. Josh Gordon is an addict.
Chad Ochocinco.
Chad Ochocinco, good boy. This is a completely different thing. You hear the Patriot way. The Patriot way is about being a professional, talking to the media, being on time. You cannot Patriot way away addiction. It was a really, really ignorant claim for anybody there. And now they've made that bed. They got 3 months of good football out of him. He's gone. Mike, what do we do now? I mean, I don't know if they have enough talent left on the field.
Run the ball. From a football standpoint, you run the football. You've got Sony Michel.
The Chiefs are out there. The Chargers are out there.
They're going to have to lean more on that.
Good.
Yeah, they're going to have to play really good defensive football. Chris Hogan's approaching free agency, so maybe for whatever reason they haven't featured him as much. It doesn't seem like, so maybe you get a little bit more out of him. But you don't have. You're losing a number 1 wide receiver. Number 1 caliber type wide receiver, even if he wasn't quite that, or maybe wasn't the game breaker. I mean, it's terrific production that he gave them for a short period. Now, we were going back at one point and saying, some people were saying, a 5th round pick, that's all that they had to give up for this guy. This is why. I mean, we talked about it on our show, Good Morning Football Weekend, and I got a couple of tweets. How could you say that? Well, because we know. We know the track record. We've seen this. We know what the Browns went through, the ups and downs, different regimes in Cleveland trying to get this guy right and make sure that he stays right. And Kyle, you're absolutely right about it. It's not just a football thing. It's a life thing. This is a guy who has admitted before that he had to drink before he played games with the Cleveland Browns. He took shots of Grand Marnier, I believe, to get himself ready because it was smooth and he could hide it. It's just that's not right. This guy has problems far beyond just a little weed here and there. His problems are well documented, and I just don't know if. The point in New England was there are more guidelines and ground rules. And there is more of an incentive to go about things professionally. And not that you would Patriot away addiction. That's a great point by you. But if it's not going to happen there, where's it going to happen?